There was a time when DC movies made $800 million, $900 million, and even $1 billion with each movie. But now, they're completely rebooting their universe without giving their characters a proper ending. Their last 7 movies flopped at the box office, and they've removed some of their most important characters one after another. So, how did DC end up in this situation? Let's find out from the beginning. So my name is Tanam, and you're watching another video of Movie Mind 17. It all started in 2010 when DC was a big name. Their movie Batman Begins was very well received, and The Dark Knight became the highest-grossing superhero movie of all time. But it wasn't just Batman. Christopher Reeve's Superman was also very popular. However, in 2008, Iron Man was released, and Warner Brothers realized that Marvel could give DC some serious competition in the coming years. At that time, people thought superhero crossovers would flop, but Marvel proved everyone wrong with the Avengers in 2012. Although Marvel was starting to compete with DC, DC owned the rights to all their characters, where Marvel didn't have the rights of their all characters. DC wanted to include Christopher Nolan's Batman in their DCEU, but Nolan refused because he had already planned a proper ending for Batman. So, their first DCEU movie was Superman's Man of Steel. They hired Zack Snyder, who had directed previous DC movies that fans loved. Man of Steel was released in 2013 and grossed $670 million at the box office, which was a good collection. Although the movie received mixed reactions, Henry Cavill's performance was highly praised. The movie was successful enough for them to continue their universe. In 2013, they announced Batman vs. Superman, which drove fans crazy. People started calling it DC's Avengers movie. Although there was some doubt about casting Ben Affleck as Batman, but the hype for this movie was immense. After its release, Batman vs. Superman became one of the most controversial superhero movies. Some people loved it, while others found it confusing and felt the movie didn't clearly explain Lex Luthor's true motivation. However, the extended cut of the movie, released later, and was well received by the majority of the audience. Another thing that the audience loved about the movie was the thrilling introduction of Wonder Woman. Although the movie grossed a significant $870 million, their expectation was to cross $1 billion. That same year, Marvel released Captain America: Civil War, which grossed $1.5 billion, and because of that, Warner Brothers panicked. Their next movie was going to be Suicide Squad. Suicide Squad grossed more than Man of Steel, earning $750 million at the box office, but it received terrible reviews from the audience. Many people called it one of the worst superhero movies of all time. After that, their Flash movie faced significant delays. But then the best thing happened to Warner Brothers, because in 2017, the Wonder Woman movie was released. Although this movie wasn't directly connected to any other superhero, it showcased Wonder Woman's origin story in a fantastic way. Not only did this movie gross $820 million at the box office, but it also became a huge fan favorite. Gal Gadot's performance was immensely praised, and after this movie, she became one of the most popular actors in the world. Because of Wonder Woman, people's interest in DC was reignited. Wonder Woman gave DC a second chance, but they blew it. Right after Wonder Woman, they began working on Justice League. Zack Snyder's initial plan was to make 2 Justice League films, but Warner Brothers wanted only 1. Then, unfortunately, a tragic event occurred. Zack Snyder's own daughter passed away. Due to this, Snyder stepped down from the project, and the entire control of the movie was given to Joss Whedon, who had directed the first 2 Avengers movies. But who knew this would become Warner Brothers' biggest mistake and a major controversy? Warner Brothers wanted this movie to have a light tone like the Avengers movies, not the dark tone, typical of Snyder's style. So Joss Whedon reshot many scenes to give the movie a lighter tone. On the other hand, fans were very disappointed after Snyder left. And because the trailer had already been released and their hopes were pinned on this movie, they couldn't delay it for Snyder. Warner Brothers instructed Whedon to finish the story in 1 movie, which Snyder didn't want. This is another reason fans believe Snyder stepped down. However, they didn't give Whedon much time either because they wanted the movie released quickly. After its release, people didn't like the movie at all. The tone was very strange, with unnecessary comedy during serious moments, and the CGI was incomplete. The movie didn't even come close to making $1 billion, grossing only $660 million, making it the lowest grossing movie in the DCEU. This was DC's most important and expensive project, but it received many negative reviews from the audiences. It's like if the Avengers had flopped and people didn't like it. The MCU would have ended in Phase 1. Many scenes of the main villain, Steppenwolf, were cut, leaving him with nothing to do but say "Mother, Mother" throughout the movie. The film also unnecessarily inserted sexism, and since Gal Gadot was the only female superhero in the movie, she bore the brunt of it. From Aquaman's awkward dialogues to forced pairing with Batman, and Flash's admiring awkward dialogues to turning him into a creepy molester, it was a mess. Later, Gal Gadot revealed that Whedon treated her poorly because she wanted her Wonder Woman character to be powerful and strong, not a sexy character. Whedon even locked her in a room for refusing to do a sexy scene with Flash, which was entirely unnecessary. Cyborg actor Ray Fisher confirmed this, saying Whedon was also racist towards him. Whedon also threatened to end Gal Gadot's career, which led to a lot of hate from fans. Since then, Joss Whedon hasn't been seen much. Due to all these controversies, Ben Affleck also stepped down from his role as Batman. It started to seem like DC would end in 2017. However, they still had to release the Aquaman movie because it had already been filmed. After the failure of Justice League, there was no hope left for Aquaman. But miraculously, Aquaman grossed $1.1 billion at the box office. It became the highest-grossing movie in DC's history and was well received by the general audience. Because of Aquaman, DC got a third chance. After that, DC focused more on lower-budget standalone movies like Shazam and Birds of Prey. Shazam was made with a budget of only $100 million and grossed over $300 million. Although this was a modest amount, it still benefited DC somewhat, and the general audience liked the Shazam movie a lot. Then they made Birds of Prey with an $80 million budget, and it grossed over $200 million. DC's hopes were reignited because the sequel to their most successful project, Wonder Woman, was about to be released. But then the pandemic hit. Initially, they planned to release it in June 2020, but because of pandemic, it was eventually released in December 2020, when many countries were still under lockdown, so it was also released on HBO Max at the same time. The movie grossed $170 million at the box office, but Wonder Woman 2 didn't receive the same acclaim as the first movie. Meanwhile, ever since watching Justice League, fans had been demanding the Snyder Cut with the hashtag #ReleaseTheSnyderCut. Zack Snyder mentioned that his Justice League movie would have been very different from the original one. Warner Brothers had one last chance to make the fans happy. Since most theaters were closed and they had the Justice League footage and Zack Snyder, and fans were ready to watch this movie on HBO Max,
will you release the Snyder Cut?
There it is. It's a hard question. I don't know. What do you think, Henry?
I reckon you should show it.
We're doing it.
Warner Brothers invested $70 million in the movie, with Zack Snyder working on it for free. It was released on HBO Max in 2021, and it quickly became one of the most watched movies of 2021. And it received immensely positive reviews from fans. After this movie, fans started demanding Justice League Part 2, wanting Snyder to finish his story. But it was impossible because the studio and Snyder didn't want to work together anymore. With Snyder and his fans saying goodbye to the DCEU, DC hired James Gunn after he left Marvel. James Gunn immediately did a soft reboot of DC's most unsuccessful project, Suicide Squad, and this time fans loved it. However, due to the pandemic, the movie only grossed $170 million. Gunn's second project was the Peacemaker series, which surprisingly was also well received by fans. But people hadn't forgotten the past controversies, so DC stopped using their previous actors. This was a significant loss because Gal Gadot and Henry Cavill were not only beloved by DC fans but also fan favorite among the whole world. After years, the Flash movie was finally set to release, which would completely reboot the Snyderverse, and by this time, they had replaced Ben Affleck and Henry Cavill. But things got complicated when Warner Brothers' CEO changed, and then Dwayne Johnson entered the studio. He had been eyeing the Black Adam project for 10 years and convinced the studio to bring back Henry Cavill's Superman for the movie. Johnson wanted to make Black Adam one of the most important characters in the DCEU, which is why he brought Superman into the movie. The Black Adam movie was well received by the audience, and Henry Cavill was very happy to return as Superman.
Hey everyone, I wanted to wait until the weekend was over before posting this, because I wanted to give you all a chance to watch Black Adam. But now that plenty of you have, I wanted to make it official that I am back as Superman. And the image you see on this post and what you saw in Black Adam are just a very small taste of things to come. So there's a lot to be thankful for, and I'll get to that in time. But I want to thank you guys most of all. Thank you for your support, and thank you for your patience. I promise it will be rewarded.
Leaving aside the marketing campaign, the budget for this movie was $200 million, but it only grossed $390 million. And because of this performance of the movie, they not only fired Dwayne Johnson, but they again fired Henry Cavill. Wow, what a joke. On the other hand, because James Gunn had successfully turned around 2 unsuccessful projects, Warner Brothers appointed him as the president of DC. After becoming president, James Gunn announced a soft reboot for DC. But this too was very confusing. He decided that almost all superheroes would remain where they were, but their stories would no longer be continued. Despite minimal promotion, Shazam 2 grossed only $130 million, but fans gave the movie positive reviews. The Flash movie turned out to be the biggest flop in the superhero genre of all time and failed to properly reboot the universe. Not many people went to see the Blue Beetle movie either, which grossed $130 million, though it was liked by the audience. Aquaman 2 was the last movie of this DC universe, grossing $430 million. And currently, no one knows which actors will be in the new DC universe and which ones won't. If DC can rise again and again after falling so many times, it can rise once more, but only if they learn from their past mistakes. I believe DC should focus on its own universe instead of comparing itself to Marvel, because many of DC's mistakes stemmed from trying to compete with Marvel.